2 years ago, we got sued by Crumble, if you followed any of that. And that gave us a lot of exposure. Well, I don't think it's the name Dirty Dough. It was that we were in a lawsuit and we put up some funny billboards and made fun of Crumble publicly and got on national news for it. Give me a million ideas. You know what I mean? Like, give me literally a million ideas on what I can do. If you put in the effort, you can kind of make anything succeed. You just keep pivoting and keep going. I mean, obviously with exceptions, but generally speaking.
Coming up next, a great conversation with Bennett Maxwell, founder of Dirty Dough Cookies. He's been involved in everything from getting sued by Crumble, starting up his franchise company, selling hundreds of locations, and even exiting. He's now entering the franchise world as a franchisee. And Bennett shares with us his journey, what it was like franchising the business, challenges in growing in the cookie market, getting sued by Crumble, and the strategies he used in his franchise sales process and growing his business. Hey, Bennett, I'm looking forward to the conversation today. And just to set this up before, I get quiet, and you founded Dirty Dough Cookies. You grew the system. You've exited. You're now an advisor. You work with other brands. There's so many things here that you could be sharing and so many insights. So I'm glad you're spending some time with us today.
Yeah, happy to be here.
So, but just set the table here. Where are you at now? How did Dirty Dough come about? What, just a general background of where you're at today.
Yeah, well, I'll give the background and then I'll give where I'm at today. Dirty Dough was a company out of Arizona that a buddy of mine started out of his apartment, post on Facebook, hey, I'm looking for an investor to open a storefront. So I invested with him. I had a solar company I was running out of San Diego at the time. And then the storefront opened March of 2020, good old COVID month. By the end of 2020, he was looking to sell Dirty Dough. And I'm like, crap, I'm going to lose my investment, So I'm like, how much are you selling it for? I ended up buying it from him. I had no experience in food or franchising. I didn't know what an FDD was or franchisee or franchisor, but I'm like, I'm going to buy this. I'm going to, franchise it. So that was the beginning of 21. We had a franchise kind of beginning of 2022. We sold quite a bit of franchises, opened up about 100 locations in 2 years. We sold about 450 franchises. And then that was very hard on everyone, expanding so quickly. But again, you don't know what you don't know. We became a food manufacturing company because Dirty Dough's model was simplicity. We will make all of the cookies for you, multi-layered stuffed. We'll ship them out to you. You just put them in the oven. So easier for the franchisees, a little bit harder for us. Anyways, I brought on Greg Majewski, who was the former CEO of Jimmy John's during their rapid growth. And that's been the most successful food franchise over the last 3 decades. He came on as CEO December of 23, and then him and his company, Craveworthy Brands, bought Dirty Dough in September of last year. So we kind of ran it for 8-9 months and then ended up acquiring it. So now I'm doing franchise sales for him, as well as for one of our franchisees who owns a business called Glow Tanning. So you kind of mentioned that. I'm looking to become a franchisee as well. So I'm looking for 2 locations to open up, like 2 Glow Tanning, which is like, red light therapy, spray tans, UV tans, massage beds, blue lights, things like that.
This is awesome. And we spoke on Ani at Glow Tanning and blew me away. And now speaking with you, Bennett, this is like an all entrepreneurship type podcast here right now. There's so many things. You're just casually mentioning acquiring the company, franchising, selling over 400 locations, exiting. I'm sure and understand how rare that is and how you're
I was trying to be brief. I could tell you I almost died like 10 times. At least mentally, I thought I was going to die. Couldn't sleep, pulling out my hair, got new hair,
But let's talk about that. Let's talk about the journey, right? So cookies, right? So there's a great trend, definitely rising tide in terms of the product, this segment. So that's only one part of, people say that's fortunate, but there's a lot of genius here too, hard work, because there's so many other brands out there in this space that will have never succeeded and never achieved what you have, even if they started the same time or started before you. As you look back on that journey, what franchising the business, becoming a franchisor, selling franchises, what are some of those lessons learned?
I would say growing slow is the way to go. like what happened with Dirty Dough, you hit it on the head. Like cookies were hot. I bought a cookie company out of Tempe. I was living in San Diego. I had no business owning a cookie company. I managed it remotely and did great. So I'm like, sweet, I could sell this if I could even further simplify it. And that was all true. And then we sold 1 million of them. And at the same, we're selling all these franchises at the same time Crumble is, and the market's becoming pretty saturated and the trend is going down a little bit like on TikTok. And then Crumble posts their numbers from 2022 to 2023 on their FDD, 58% decline in profit across the entire system. So we were growing with the hype, but we also kind of got hit with, a pretty big downturn, not just on cookies, but, inflation with food. So that was really rough. If we were going a lot slower, we wouldn't have been affected as much. Now, at the same time, like the plan and the strategy, there were a lot of benefits of fast growth because it's all economies of scale. I had to go buy we're paying 40 grand for a warehouse and you spend, $1 million on equipment. You want to spread that over 100 stores, not over 3 stores. Same thing with the logistics, because we were making them all in Utah, then shipping them out. So that, on the flip side, that hyper growth really helped out. And then it also helped out the brand because the brand's kind of everywhere. Slower growth. And then also on the vertical integration, like we did it at the beginning, getting the warehouse, buying all the machines and like controlling the process. One, because we had to figure out the process and what it was. And with weekly rotating cookies, that was kind of hard. But once we figured that out, we should have outsourced quicker. The first thing we did when Craveworthy came on a year ago is outsourced all of that. He's like, we have no business doing this until we're at 300 locations. And that was millions of dollars and a lot of time invested into that when we could have just invested into like the model and then found a co-packer to do that. Same thing on the logistics. We started buying trucks and then being a logistics partner where it was like, no, we're trying to do too much too quickly. Let's scale that back down.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many points there. And I love the way you're breaking down slow growth, fast growth, right? Which in your case, I mean, you have a market that is moving really quick, cookies.
Mm-hmm.
And, when we're speaking with our clients and, we're discussing the viability of franchising, typically we're focused on unit economics, industry, and founder goals, right? And if you're in a pretty consistent, you're in a hyper growth industry where if you're not taking market share, you're going to get left behind, right?
Yeah.
And then
There's definitely that argument of, because we've had to close stores. I mean, we opened 6 corporate stores in Utah. As soon as Craveworthy came in, they're like, we're not dealing with that. That's a crappy market. And like, you close 6 stores overnight and you're like, crap. But at the same time, like, would we even have opened those 6 stores if we didn't push the growth? So maybe you lose a few stores because you're growing so fast, but also again, like the brand awareness, there's a lot of those kind of other side benefits. I don't know. It's easy to be like the grass is greener on the other side, right? If I would have grown slow, like, man, I didn't succeed like all the other cookie companies that grew slow because I didn't have the brand awareness. I didn't have the marketing dollars. I didn't have the royalties. Or you do the hyper growth and like, man, grass is greener if you grow slower, right? So there's definitely the pros and cons to both. If I did it again, I'm incapable of growing slow, but I'm capable of growing slower, maybe 100 franchises, not 400 to start out with. But
yeah,
I
but
think, go ahead.
I'm like, I think giving yourself enough credit though, right? I think 9 out of 10 times quick growth like that is not the right way to go. But in your case, you're facing like an economic market challenge where there are those companies that probably started before you and never made it out of that initial growth stage to take that market share.
Yeah, I mean, we're at 80 some odd locations. We're number 2 behind Crumble's 1,000 locations in like the gourmet cookie space. And then you have other cookie companies, that have been around, Mrs. Fields, Great American, Cookie Tips Treats, but more of the traditional cookie, not the large weekly rotating cookie. So yeah, we had 1 million cookie companies come up because it was so hot, and then most of them died off. I do think that we're still here because of the fast growth. I mean, if we only had a dozen stores and we're trying to do a centralized production, we'd be in the same situation that everybody else is with a dozen stores. And the unit economics just don't work when you're only at a dozen stores.
I never thought of it till you just mentioned it. Like, what do you think it's like in the boardroom or whatever room they're in at Mrs. Fields and some of these other companies where they're like, we basically originated the cookie franchise
Yeah.
concept, and how do we miss on the biggest trend ever?
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah, that is very strange that they didn't try to jump in and say, no, we got big cookies and small cookies, But I do think the big cookie trend because it was so expensive and we're facing, inflation, all of that. And having the smaller options, is really good as well, kind of having both. But yeah, they missed out on the big cookie trend for sure.
So Bennett, for our subscribers and our audience, a lot of entrepreneurs out there looking to franchise their business, right? You were in a um, service industries, restaurant industries, all these different industries, right? As they evaluate franchising, right? We typically focus on unit economics, industry, and for me, the most important is founder mindset and really having the conversation of you really need a 5-year vision here. Typically, for most franchises, I'm like, your year 1 and 2, it's building a base, pioneering franchisees, building validation, and then scaling from there. But what's some advice you have for someone who's not sure if this is the right move for them? Like, what should they be evaluating as a founder, as an owner, when they're making the decision?
Yeah, I mean, the advice that I got was, do you have anything that's unique, that's patentable? My answer with cookies was no. I'm making specialized cookies and we have the world's only 3-layer cookie, but it's just because I saw a machine and applied it. I can't get a patent on that. So that means market share and growing fast is more important, right? Because now you're worried about competitors because you're not really doing anything unique. So speed to market, that was kind of the one question that I remember that I got asked that helped me determine that I wanted a franchise, because I didn't have anything like that. So it's like, again, speed to market was very important. Control, versus going over corporate. You have a lot more control if you're on the corporate side versus franchising. I mean, is that what you're asking, like pros and cons of
No. This is
corporate or
important.
franchising?
Yeah, no, that's exactly like, look, you've been through the journey, you've succeeded, right? There's people watching this video. And let's go back to having something unique, right? Because a
Mhm.
lot of people use these terms, not you, but consultants, advisors, even about having something unique about the business. But what I explained, at least what I see when we see the winning brands, it doesn't necessarily mean reinventing or creating a new category.
Mhm.
It's just doing it better in terms of customer service delivery, how you get to market. I'm curious, even here, when we're talking about, many of our clients, a lot of times as part of the franchising process, they're going through a rebranding process and things like that. But for Dirty Dough, let me ask you, if it was a different name, do you think it would have been as successful?
Yeah. I
Okay.
don't know. I don't think the name, I I think it's a good name, but having the name Dirty for a food brand is
Mhm. Yeah.
it's not like we're getting media attention because our name's Dirty Dough. So we're not getting the pros, but you do kind of, but it is catchy. I think where we succeeded though more, if you 2 years ago we got sued by Crumble, if you followed any of that, and that gave us a lot of exposure. Well, I don't think it's the name Dirty Dough. It was that we were in a lawsuit and we put up some funny billboards and made fun of Crumble publicly and got on national news for it. And then that gave us a lot of eyes. And I already had what I consider is like one of the most simple food franchises. Put a cookie in the oven. Every cookie cooks for the same time, temperature, fan speed. And we had a pretty good team. I hired the former CEO and founder of Maui Wowie Smoothies and Coffee, Jill Summer Hayes.
Yep.
Grew her brand to 650, very similar, small food concept, had her as CEO. So it's like, we had a good model, had a good CEO, really good advisors as well. And then we just needed eyes, and then Crumble sued us and we got on Good Morning America and CNBC. And I got to kind of, talk about it on that, and sold a lot of franchises from that.
When Crumble sued you guys, how many locations did you have?
We had one corporate, it was just the corporate store that I bought. They sued
And
us a month before we opened our first franchise.
so Crumble sues Dirty Dough. I mean, without getting into the legal items, what were
Oh, I
they
broke it
suing
all
over?
down.
Oh
We
yeah?
have we have a rectangle box. We have sprinkles on our cookies. I mean, I broke this down. I get when it was happening. Like, I broke down every point of the lawsuit and why it was bullshit and why you can go verify it was bullshit. Like, they put side by side pictures of sprinkles on their cookie next to our cookie, and I was like,
Right.
"You guys own sprinkles?" And then it comes to find out, if you just have an Instagram account, you could go see that we released the sprinkle cookie first. So they put 5 examples of them copying us in a lawsuit and sued us over it. Anyways, very, very sloppy, but it had nothing to do with the claims. It has to do with, I mean, I can sue you right after this call and then go get an SBA loan tomorrow. You can't. I can,
Right.
and why did I sue you? Well, I sued you because you asked me a question that made me feel uncomfortable. right? I mean, you could sue somebody for any reason. In SBA, it doesn't matter. It's gone. And I mean, it's like until that's resolved, you correct me on this. You're an attorney, right? You correct me on this, but until that's resolved, you can't go get an SBA loan. And I have to disclose that on my franchise agreement, no matter what, even if it's
Right.
a bullshit lawsuit, if it's not resolved yet. So I think it was just a business tactic, and it backfired on them, mainly because I was public about it. I threw up billboards like right in front of their headquarters, which is across the street from us, saying our cookies don't crumble with competition. Let your taste buds be the judge. Cookies so good we're being sued on different billboards, like having fun with it, and that helps us out a lot.
And I agree. Look, for companies that have the capital, sometimes it's not even the win in the lawsuit, it's just slowing down competition, right?
Yeah.
Do you think that's what was this
Go
attorney
read the
driven?
lawsuit. Go
What's
read the
that?
lawsuit. I said, you read the
Yeah.
lawsuit and you'll agree with me. Anybody, it's like, I've never read a lawsuit. My stomach dropped. I thought I was going out of business. You get sued by $1 billion company. And then you read it and you're like, wait, none of this makes sense. You guys are saying we don't claim the shape of the box on the trademark, period. Like, cause they have a trademark on their box.
Right.
And then you're suing us specifically over the shape and nothing else. Like, did you guys read this lawsuit before you submitted it? So anyways, if you go read it, it's very apparent. Like, they had no claims. It was just a way of stifling competition, which is perfectly legal. I think it's dumb. I think it's unethical, but it's legal to sue somebody for any reason.
No, but it's so hard. Like, and again, we work with franchisors. The last thing I want to do is see them involved in litigation, right?
Yeah.
And I know myself, I know other entrepreneurs. You get these ridiculous lawsuits, and even though they're ridiculous, they get in the back of your mind. It's like, right, the instability. How long did that lawsuit go on?
18 months. And it
Okay,
really didn't do anything. After a year, we had a preliminary injunction. The judge ruled in our favor. And that was a fun 2 days of just in court watching them get destroyed by, do you really think you own sprinkles on a cookie? And why did you put vanilla ice cream in a lawsuit? You know what I mean?
right.
And then we settled like 6 months after that.
Yeah,
So,
I
but we
the
didn't even we only got through, we didn't even finish discovery. They didn't even finish discovery. It was just, everything was just delayed to spend money. After 18 months, we didn't even finish discovery.
Right. So I guess they thought they're going to scare you out of the market or change your positioning and then
And
just
it
move
back,
on.
but it was the opposite. They sued us when we had one store, and then they made us into their biggest competitor.
Right. Millions of dollars in PR because you're smart about
Yeah.
it. All right. So I mean, like, that's probably the best litigation story I've ever heard, right? With in terms of crumble cookies and whatnot. So you get past that litigation, PR hits, and franchise sales start ramping up,
It wasn't past the litigation. It was right when it started.
and
Because
they
we were
ramped.
selling 20 franchises a month, 2 months after they sued us. Because it was plain, again, it wasn't like, wait to see what happens with this lawsuit. It's like, just read the lawsuit. There's nothing here. Like, go ask
Right.
any attorney, like, we'll get through it. Anyways, so it was like a hurdle, right? And it did prevent some people from buying franchises for sure. But it made a lot more people buy franchises because they wouldn't have known about us otherwise.
Have you ever heard from Crumble since, or anyone from their team?
Yeah, I mean, not the main guy. My cousin is, anyways, yeah, I've heard. I was a big fan of Crumble, and I was like praising him on every single podcast up until that lawsuit, and I'm like, oh, come on. But it's just two people. It's just Sawyer and Jason that seem to be assholes, and everybody else seems to be amazing. Because I mean, I live in Utah County, and they're in Utah County, so like, you go to the gym and you see somebody with a Crumble thing, and I'll talk to them. They have
Right.
a really good culture there.
So now, so you grow the company, you do an exit, you're still involved in the franchise world, consulting, advisory, restaurant brands. What does that look like for you today?
I mean, I wouldn't say I'm advising for restaurant brands. I do take a call a day from a random person that hits me up on like, hey, what should I do here? But that's just kind of a give back because so many people did that to me. Mainly what I'm focusing on is what my background is, and it's building sales processes. So I had a solar company, residential solar. I mean, it was a sales brokerage. And before that, it was all sales as well. So what I focus on right now is building the sales program through video education. Like, if I know the selling points and what people want and what they don't want, and I could put that into a podcast and then make all prospects listen to that podcast before they get on with a salesperson, I know my scripted podcast is going to sell whatever I'm selling better than a random salesperson that I trained. So a lot of it is building out that, and that's how we do that. And then you have franchisee testimonial videos and franchisee success videos, and then like meet the department head videos. So prospective franchisees are educating themselves without getting on the phone with me. Like I won't get on the phone. You'll see my text if they don't confirm the appointment and that they've watched a 50-minute podcast that I did with Ani, the owner of Glow Tanning. I tell them to reschedule. I'm like, it's not worth anybody's time. Like go get all of the basic information on why this brand is the best on a podcast. That way we could just talk and get to know each other rather than me tell you Glow Tanning's the best franchise because they've been in business for 15 years and they've never closed a location and they're at 100 locations.
But in terms of franchise, so one of the issues I see for new and emerging franchisors, I think everyone focuses on becoming a franchisor and then maybe spending money, broker groups, spending money on media, but they're not focused enough on their franchise sales process, or they think they should just go hire someone to handle the whole thing for them. How should they be thinking about the franchise sales discovery process, and strategically, what should they be focused on?
Yeah, I don't have experience with broker groups. We got, again, I mean, I'll call it luck because I think we got a lot of exposure, and we sold 450 franchises without paying for $1 of leads. Now we did try a lead source, but we didn't close any. And we're like, okay, we'll just stick to the organic. None of those were from the Dirty Dough social media page. If you go look, we've never said, hey, come by, we sell franchises. It was me building my personal brand. And I would say most of that was also LinkedIn. So my advice to anybody would be go build a personal brand, start posting. I have it all automated. People out of the Philippines are doing it. It's usually $5 an hour. I post 1 to 2 times a day. And then on LinkedIn, you use Sales Navigator, you can build lists. So I want to target everybody in the state of Colorado with, a franchise operator or whatever I'm trying to target, right? Or angel investor, CEO. And then I use another software. This one's called, I'm sure there's a lot of them, but Buzz AI. And that will then automate those connection requests. So I went from not having a personal brand 3-4 years ago, never posting on LinkedIn. And in the last 12 months, I've had 500,000 impressions and I have 17,000 followers. And those followers are in those target demographics, right? It's people with CEO, angel investor, VC, private equity, franchise operator, restaurant operator, whatever. Anyways, that's how we've mainly gone to do that. And it's worked for us. I wouldn't ever trust a brokerage group, I guess. I don't know. I mean, but I'm kind of becoming a brokerage group, I guess. So maybe it's just who knows how to sell your product better than you, right? But at the same time, maybe you just don't know how to sell it. With a background in sales, before I franchised, I talked to 100 people and I said, hey, this is my idea. What do you think about it? And I switched the model tons of different times, but I didn't say, this is my business, buy it because it's the best. It was, this is what I have. This is what I'm creating, yay or nay. And then I went and created it, and there wasn't an emotional attachment to like, oh, I don't like your chocolate chip cookie. And it's like, okay, cool. Let's get another recipe that the majority of the people in our target demographic like, and let's switch it. Like, let's just look at this objectively. What do you need? And can I go create that? And then if I do, kind of piece together. But I was like, quote unquote, pre-selling the idea on like, hey, this is what I'm doing. And then I also got a lot of good advice as I did that. One, I determined I did want a franchise. I met with the owner of Everable. They're at a few hundred units, I think, Jeff Finster, and he completely changed the whole model because I was going to make franchisees make their own cookies. And he's like, nope, you're going to have to centralize that, and we kept pivoting and making different changes as I was just talking to people and building the program. So anyways, feedback on the sales process. What are the top 3 reasons why people would buy your franchise? And what are the top 3 reasons people wouldn't? And you have to go interview 10 to 20 prospective buyers to go get that information. And then, formulating the sales pitch to present it. And then I would do most of that through video, most of the sales through video education.
I think that's so straightforward, but it's also brilliant. And how many people don't do that? So as you peeled that back and you were evaluating reasons why they would buy or reasons why they wouldn't, what were you identifying?
Like specific to like a
Yeah,
Glow franchise or a Dirty Dough franchise?
any franchise that
Yeah,
you're involved with.
so you get whatever objection is like, oh, you guys are a new brand, right? You get that objection 3 times, then you change your pitch to not get that objection. And you bring it up before they bring it up and you say, hey, Dirty Dough's a new brand. And I always give the pros and cons. I don't want to just give the pros because then I think it's kind of bullshit, you know? So it's like, look, here's the pros and cons with a new brand. I don't know what you're looking for. Here's the pros and cons. And then you ask them what they're looking for. Like, are you looking for something like a Subway that's more stable? You're probably not going to get any territory. You're just going to be another number, but everybody knows who Subway is. Or are you looking for a younger brand that you can expand with that has more potential? If they say I'm looking for Subway, okay, cool. Let me give you the website to Subway's application, right? Like, and then you're sending them off right there at that very beginning of the call, kind of as you're vetting that. But that was that's a real life example of Dirty Dough and a real life example of kind of how to overcome that. Glow tanning would be what man, I'm not getting any objections yet. People are just buying these because the financials look so strong. Is tanning a dying industry? You know, and then pulling up again. So now that's baked into my pitch deck before they bring it up. Like, hey, a lot of people like, here's the history of the tanning. Here's when it went up. Here's when it went down. And you can see in the past few years, it's going back up again. But again, if I say that and I show them the trajectory of tanning and that we're going at a 5.2% rate now, and you know, the pros and cons of that, does that make sense? The one thing that they're not going to tell me right after that is like, oh, well, is tanning a dying industry? I was like, well, I just went over that. Right. So if you could identify the objections, then you're bringing them up and hedging off the concern beforehand or steering them to that other way. Like my first slide deck as well is, you know, are you looking at any other franchises right now? Or are we the only option? And one guy the other day said tropical smoothie. I was like, sweet, let me teach you how to look up an FDD. And I screen shared and we went to some law firm's website that redirected me to California state website. I type in top tropical smoothie and I get their FDD and I scroll down and we just look at the numbers and we compare it side by side. And I'm like, hey, if you want to do smoothies, I know about smoothies. Jill used to be my CEO and she was, you know, the founder of Maui Wowie, all these other options. But like, I'm exploring that with him. And then he's vetting it out himself. He's like, okay, that's not a good option, which I think is a little different in the sales process, but it works because I'm with them both steps of the way rather than just saying, you know, go talk to Tropical Smoothie and come back to me.
Yeah, I think it's so overlooked is, you know, that counter narrative in a genuine way of like, here's the plus and here's the negative and let's evaluate, let's deal with it up front. Which so many new franchisors have that new brand element unproven. And so glow tanning, right? We spoke on Ani, and that's an amazing story in and of itself, how he's grown glow tanning. I mean, just an amazing person. So how did you get involved with glow tanning and what's in store there?
So Ani owns a lot of the commercial strip malls where the glow tannings are. And a lot of these are like Oklahoma, Arkansas, that don't have, you know, franchises that typically go in there. So he bought Dirty Dough franchises a few years ago and he put them next to his glow tannings. And then it's also raising the value of his real estate. I had no idea about the success of his business till just a few months ago when he's like, hey, we've had stores open for 15 years. We've never closed anything. I'm ready to expand. We have all the ops. I'm like, okay, let me see the item 19, you know, I want to see that item. And then I saw the item 19. I was like, this is the best one I've ever seen. Heck yeah, I would love to be part of, you know, this growth. And then as I'm promoting it and looking into it, I'm like, this is a little too good to be true. And then I had to go interview all of the franchise owners. And I'm like, okay, either they're all in on some big conspiracy theory, or
Right.
every single person in this system is actually alive, happy, and thriving at 100 units. And then once I found that out, I'm like, all right, I'm buying some of these too. So I'm looking at opening up to myself. And it's like a third UV tanning, a third spray tanning, and a third health wellness. And it's like 70+% subscription based. So it's just membership models, 1 or 2 employees, pretty simple to operate. So anyways, Ani has really taken out, I thought Dirty Dough is really simple. And I mean, it is very simple, especially considering food. But then you compare it to like tanning, where you take out the food element and you're like, wait, there is zero waste now, you know, and you're going to train all of my employees as a franchisee to learn how to sell. You know, they do the corporate training and they do all of the marketing, even at the local level. Franchisees are paying for it, but they're using their marketing guide, no additional costs and things like that. Brand ambassadors, 10 brand ambassadors every month, every location at no additional charge. I'm like, okay, Ani, you've built something pretty cool. So yeah, that one's exciting. He also has an owner's program. I don't know if of his 100 units, maybe 13 of them are owned by 8 employees that started at $12 an hour. And after they work for him for a year or two, he pairs them with an investor, and then they get a store. But yeah, like 12 stores now, and the numbers on them are really, really good, are owned by people that used to make $12 an hour. And I'm like, yeah, I want to be, I don't know. That's exciting for me. Being a part of changing somebody else's life in that way is pretty cool.
I mean, meeting Ani, like it just blows my mind sometimes. Again, me too. When I'm speaking with him, you're drawn to him. Like he's a great leader. I'm like, is this all, there? So for franchise buyers, right? So you have an amazing perspective, right? You've been through this franchisor high level, and now you're going to be buying a franchise. Set aside glow tanning, just generally for the people who are looking to buy a franchise, what's your advice on how they should approach from, should I even consider buying a franchise through, if I'm going to do it, this is what I need to be focused on?
If I was entering a new business category, okay, I don't have experience as a franchisee yet, right? I'm just starting this
Right.
process. But being on the other end, yeah, if I'm jumping into a new category, being a franchisee and learning the systems that somebody else has already created, I would say, yeah, that I would lean way more towards franchising than not franchising if it's a new category or your first time business owner. Financials, I would say financials and validation are the next two, probably with validation being, well, I don't know which one's more important, but talking with, like what I'm telling you, like with Glow, I talked with all of them, like everybody on camera, interviewing them, like I want to know. I've made this mistake way too many times. Usually it's hiring people. They're calling one reference that, is their brother-in-law that you didn't know is their brother-in-law that's going to give them a good review no matter what. You need to really get other people to validate it, not the salesperson, not the owner, the franchisees that have been in it for a while. And then obviously a strong item 19, I would look for a 3-year payback. Can you get your total cash invested or total investment back in 3 years? I think that's another good marker. And then are you going to put in the work? Because even if it's an easy system, it still requires work. You still have to know how to run a bank account in QuickBooks, and I got into that with Dirty Dough franchisees say, hey, this is so easy to run. And comparatively speaking, it is, but it still takes work. You can't live out of state and hire a 20-year-old and never set foot in your store for the first 6 months and expect it to succeed. Like that's not going to work. So no matter what route you're going, make sure that you're not in it passively, but you're like, I'm going to jump into it full time for at least the first 6 months to a year, learn it, and then, delegate and hand it off.
Yeah, I mean, that's some great advice. And if you don't mind, I just want to recap because, like, really good advice. So, if you're buying a franchise, every FDD contains a list of franchisees that are in the system and left the system, right? And so, Bennett's point is don't just call the 1, 2, or 3 that they recommend. Reach out, be really broad, focus on validation, have conversations of, hey, are you glad you bought this franchise? Would you do it again? And other details. So, validation. But what I really want to focus in on, because so many franchisors have this question also, which is ROI expectations. And so item 19 is the section of the FDD franchisors, the only place they can give financial information about performance. You mentioned from what you said, am I correct? You're looking for in 3 years to recoup your initial investment, meaning the profit from the business is going to pay for that business over the course of 3 years.
Yeah. So yeah, if you're spending $1 million on something, you need to make 333,000. But if you're buying into a cookie shop and it's only costing you 250,000, if you make 70,000 a year, that's kind of that's the rule that I've been taught. And you just go with what you hear, I guess.
No,
Sounds
I
good to
look,
me.
I think it's good fundamentals, right? I
Yeah.
mean, the lifespan, whether you have a 10-year contract, renews for another 10, the lifespan of that retail box is that 10-year period. So you recoup it in 3 years. I mean, that's at least the takeaway here is that's the ROI analysis.
Yes. And then I want to throw a caveat on there too, because I shouldn't say a lot. You can look at an item 19 and it says like the average store made $121,000, well, is that owner operated though? Because if that's owner operated, that's a whole different story, because as an owner, how much money did you leave for your old job to buy into this job, right? It's like, well, I left $100,000 job and now making 120, and it took me, 300,000 to open up the store. You're not making 120,000 a year. You're making 20,000 a year, right? You just paid quite a bit of money to increase your salary by 20,000. So as you're diving into the numbers, I think that has a big swing effect. Like, are these numbers owner operated or not owner operated? Because my 3-year rule would apply to you not being owner operated, if that makes sense.
No, it makes complete sense. And I think too, you're bringing up another point, which is the opportunity cost, right? You're leaving a career, you're spending your time, you're devoting it to the business, and you can't overlook that. And I think on the reverse side, franchisors, especially new and emerging, they need to adopt that analysis that you're applying, right? Because if you're selling this franchise, you understand your opportunity profile, you really need to have that difficult question. We have it all the time, which is, okay, what is our item 19 demonstrating? And this is at the corporate level, not even at the franchise level, for new franchisors. And how does that impact your franchisees? Are they operating the business? Are they the man in the van on that service platform? And what does that economic opportunity look like? So franchisee validation, certainly evaluating unit economics. What do you recommend for franchisees when they're looking at numbers, item 19 in an FDD? You're going to see a broad range. You're going to see the high and the low. And a lot of times I feel like franchisees over-index to the high. And what's your take on that?
Like the 70% of people feel like they, are smarter than average or more attractive than average. Okay, from a sales perspective, this is what I say, because Glow, for example, breaks it down to quartiles. So I say, let's just focus on the bottom quartile. They made $500,000. Bottom quartile for all of last year made $252,000. So there's no guarantee. And then I pull back a little bit. There's no guarantee that you're going to make a single dollar though. Okay. But this is what the average quartile made. What I do is I look at how I've performed in anything else I've done. And I'm usually in the top quartile, if not the top 5%. So I'm going to look at the other end, and this shows $576,000. And I'm not going to expect that because I am a franchisee. I don't expect that. It's going to take me a few years to build, but that's how I look at it. I want to say, is the bottom quartile enough for me, while recognizing there's not a guarantee, but knowing if I'm going to say, if my goal is to be in the top quartile, what evidence do I have to say that I'm a top quartile person? If you're making 80 grand at a corporate job or 120 grand, you're probably not going to be in that top tier because you're not performing that top tier right now without really knowing that person, right? But it's like, if you're an average person, just like look at the average numbers, and that's totally fine. The other thing is, if you wanted to start diving in a little bit more, it's like, well, why were the bottom stores the bottom stores? And am I going to do those things? Because I'm interviewing those franchisees, right? Like, if you were to do this again, what would you do? What do you not like? And if they're like, well, I don't like the sales part for whatever franchise, it's like, well, I love that. So I'm not even going to take that franchisee's crappy numbers into consideration because they're not doing something that I know I'm going to do. And then you call the top franchisees and like, what are the things that I have to do to be a top franchisee? And if they say things I'm not willing to do, then I'm not in that category. But I think that can help you decipher where you're going to fall a little bit more. The other thing though, is not only looking at your FDD or the FDD that you want to buy into, go look at the competitors. Like, I literally have Palm Beaches pulled up on my screen right now. Again, you can look up most of these FDDs for free online. I have all of Crumble's numbers memorized because, again, I'm just looking at them online and I want to know what else is out there. Because if I'm selling you on a franchise, what are your other options? What am I competing against? I don't know. So I need to ask you. And then I also need to know the other options. And I need to know more about Tropical Smoothie than you do if you're looking into it. And I could find that out really quick. And then now, again, I'm the expert and kind of trying to guide you through these.
I mean, you're sharing so much here, even just the thought process, how you approach it for both, not only franchise buyers, but franchisors. And I think so many miss the mark in not evaluating or understanding the sales process in a genuine way that you're approaching it. I'm always like, so when I speak with multi-unit franchisees, a topic that comes up often, they expected one location to be a home run. It turns out it was the worst location ever. And then the location they didn't expect, real estate wise, just cash flow positive in week one. And so that gets into the real estate story. But When you look at underperforming franchisees, what are the common characteristics or traits or actions that you see?
I would say most of it is just a lack of like really wanting to figure it out. And I would just say that's the problem in every business, right? And the problem with really anything like it, are you overweight? It's because you're not focusing your efforts. So that's it, right? Like you know how to solve problems, but are you focusing on solving all of those problems? So like, anyways, like when I was running the Dirty Dough, I had no experience, but it was like, I was calling up the influencers, hiring people out of the Philippines to do the influencers. We were canvassing schools, like I was trying any and everything under the sun, and it was kind of all working, right? Some more than others. And then you have other people that are like, no, I just want to put $500 on Facebook ads. And it's like that's probably not going to work. So it's are you going to hit the first problem and then kind of just like, shit, I'm just going to double down and keep doing this, keep doing the same old, or are you going to pivot and pivot and pivot and use Chat GTP, which is smarter than any franchisee you could call anyway, and say, give me a million ideas. You know what I mean? Like, give me literally a million ideas on what I can do. If you put in the effort, you could kind of make anything succeed. You just keep pivoting and keep going. I mean, obviously with exceptions, but generally speaking.
No, I like, and I think that's a great example. And which goes to your other point, which was, if you're considering buying a franchise, it's not all going to be done for you. And you need to be working and active. And if you're just buying and thinking you're just going to press a button,
Yeah.
it's not going to work out.
I mean, like I shared that we closed the 6 corporate stores here in Utah. They were very underperforming. I mean, they were in my backyard, but I wasn't doing anything. Now, when they opened, we were, and they were doing great, but it takes time and effort. But I'm looking at like, do I try to save some stores or do I build the company, right? But that's why those weren't performing, is because I wasn't legitimately, I just wasn't focusing on them, and we didn't have the bandwidth to focus on those because we were opening up, 1 to 2 stores a week.
And I hear that story so often, right? So smart, amazing franchise systems, franchise teams, and they're like, Charles, our corporate numbers is down because we're neglecting our corporate to support the franchisees and their growth. And that happens often. At least I see it often. So next steps, next venture, tremendous focus on glow tanning and the team there. Franchisee, you're working with the team. I'll put you on the spot. I mean, aside from numbers, which if you had encapsulate at least what interests you in glow tanning right now, what are those special factors?
I'm very big into the health and wellness side. Like I just started tanning because I got a pass at the competitors, But this morning I have this little thing that goes around my neck. It's called the pulsetto. It stimulates the vagus nerve, which activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which helps your body rest and relax. At the same time, I'm under a full body red light thing, laying down, and I do that every morning. And that's the types of things they have there. Right here in my office, pointing to it, there's a vibration plate. I have bands right here for stretching. They have the vibration plates with the red light and they have the blue light. So you come out of that and you feel amazing. My wife's Mexican. She doesn't tan, but it doesn't matter because it's like $100 a month, you and your wife, unlimited everything. You could go every day without even tanning and just get massage beds. And I mean, you just kind of get massage beds, massage chairs, red light, blue light, dry sauna, wet sauna. I mean, just tons of different things, So it's like affordable luxury for the everyday person who can't afford $50 a month or a couple of $100 a month. And your wife could go get pampered every third day. You know what I mean? Like that's fun, that affordable luxury factor. The other thing is I met with the competitor here twice, the owner of Beach's Tanning Salon. And the first time he's like, dude, this is a shitty market. You don't want to come here. It's really bad and this and that. And then I met with him again. He's like, oh, I'm doubling down. I have 3 leases signed. You don't stand a chance. And I'm like, okay, that's 2 signs that I need to come here because he's scrambling to figure out how do I keep out a competitor because he knows that, it's a nicer service for a lower price. Anyways, those are two kind of things that I'm excited about. I got into cookies and I was 310 pounds. I'm about 185 right now. So I've lost.
Oh, wait, really?
I lost 125 pounds. So when I got into cookies, it was like, whatever, I don't feel bad about selling cookies in the sense like people are going to eat cookies no matter what, but I do feel better about promoting health, So I like that factor as well. And I do want my business ventures to align more with who I am today versus who I was 3 years ago, which really is a completely different person.
So when you think about who you were 3 years ago, business, physically, what are your thoughts like when you reflect on that journey?
I'm just grateful that I got through it because I feel way better, but it's been hell. Like last year is definitely the worst, most stressful year. Just like, am I going to make it through it? Right. Until I actually pursued it. It's more like just that fear of like, oh, is it going to happen? Is it going to happen? Like, am I going to make payroll? Am I going to go bankrupt? Am I going to do this? All of those what ifs? And your mind doesn't shut off. Right. And you just keep going. And then I started exploring those what ifs and like, okay, well, what is a bankruptcy? And actually like, what would I keep? What would I not keep? And then I'm like, oh, it's not like I would be fine. Like I would survive physically. I'm safe, which takes me back to like the nervous system that I have a sauna and a cold plunge in my garage as well. You get into 32-degree water and especially if you get up to your neck, like that chills you out. You're not thinking about bankruptcy at that moment. Okay. I promise you're thinking about, am I breathing right? So leaning into the body and getting the parasympathetic nervous system more active, I think is really what I focus on the most to get me through that. Now coming on the other side, like what are the differences? I mean, one, energy levels if you lose a lot of weight. But I would say it's more of a detachment of outcomes versus who I am as a person. Like Dirty Dough succeeds or it doesn't succeed, it shouldn't reflect on who I am, right? And it's really that detachment and also kind of stripping the ego and like, man, I'm so important that I have 200 employees. And if I fail all of I'm letting them down. It's not just 200 employees, but it's all their families. Like, really? Am I their only option for employment? Like, why am I so special that I think all that, is my responsibility to give them a job? It's like, I'm going to do my best. But that weighed down on me a ton before I really kind of reframed it, right? Like, I have so many people counting on me, but it's like, no, I don't. No, I don't. Because they had a job before me and they'll have a job after. Why am I making myself so important in their lives? You know what I mean? So detaching and just like whatever's going to happen happens and being able to accept unpredictability rather than doubling down on control. If I could just control more and I control everything externally, then that internal will be good. Right. And that's what I tried for 31 years. And then a year ago, I switched and I said, okay, how about if I just change my mind and my nervous system because problems are just perception. So if I could just change my perceptions, I don't see anything as a problem. So now I only have one problem to solve, and that's my brain and my thought patterns, rather than I have to fix every issue in my business.
I I I think there's no better way to end a conversation than with that type of mindset, and really, like, I mean, credit to you because you're at a young age and you're focused on the right things and embracing that unpredictability. I love that because you can't control it, and every negative has such a positive potential in it. It's amazing.
Yep.
Um, but I don't know if like from covering things from franchising, buying a franchise, growth, strategy in life. I mean, I appreciate you covered so much today, and I did not expect this conversation. I'm blown away by it. I like it. It blows me away when we have these conversations. I am so grateful that we got to have this conversation today.
Well, likewise, I appreciate you having me on. Thank you.